to the first episode of Why We Do What We Do. This is going to be a podcast about just sort of talking about why psychology and why people do things they do. My name is Abraham. I'm going to be your host, and my co-host here.
I am Ryan O.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
This first episode, we want to just introduce what our intentions are, what we're here to talk about, and who we're speaking to a little bit. And so, but first, we'll give a little bit of background on ourselves. So, do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Ryan O'Donnell. I've got a background in psychology, but an area really in behavior analysis. And I stumbled upon the field. It just kind of came out of nowhere. I took a Psychology 101 class in my first semester at the University of Nevada, Reno, and it caught my eye. I also had a professor that was very kind of eccentric and had a lot of very cool ways to kind of pitch the field and like why it was relevant to a lot of different areas of life. From there, I just decided that the 101 class was interesting enough to take the next one in the course sequence. And luckily, that was an area called behavior analysis, and I immediately fell in love with it. It was the first class that I was kind of good at, but also found myself interested in studying on a Monday, which is just very weird back then. So I kind of hounded my professor, got into actually helping people use that science to make their lives a little bit better, which a lot of that has been historically situated in helping people with intellectual disabilities. So I spent a few years, about 4 or 5, kind of going across various settings, helping people with intellectual disabilities and age ranges. And now I'm in Reno, Nevada, and I work in a couple capacities, mainly in instructional design, which I found out was kind of a subset of some behavior analytic research, as well as organizational kind of performance and helping in the areas of kind of goal setting, and then helping people explore areas of their life and how to kind of pursue goal setting frameworks and kind of chase their passion down a little bit more.
So, were you a psych major when you started?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed that. So I was a psych major. I did a business administration minor in my undergrad, and then I went to Florida Institute of Technology for a master's in applied behavior analysis. And since then, I just kind of continue to read. It's a lot of things outside of behavior analysis and psychology now, because I realized I was getting a little too engulfed in that and not paying attention to what the rest of the world was doing. So
easy to do.
Yeah. So how about yourself, Abraham?
Oh, well, similar. I mean, I have a similar background in that I started, and I actually wasn't a psychology major, but I became a psychology major, and I guess even going back a little bit further than that, I took like a psych class in high school, and I remember initially thinking like how cool, like we can know what people are thinking, and I don't know, I'm not entirely sure what my interest was at that point, but it was really mystical. It had sort of a magical element of like you can read people's minds, and we can do their body language, and we control what people do, and that sort of thing, and that intrigued me. Especially as a consumer of fantasy.
Yeah,
I think the mystical element of psychology really appealed to me initially, and so I did become a psych major at some point in my undergraduate, and I found that the classes didn't really do it for me. I never really got behind any theory or anything. It seemed like everybody had their theory for everything, and everything sort of fell short in its own way, and there was a whole lot of speculation. And I know I never liked the idea of people telling me, oh, that's because you're thinking this. And I'd be like, well, how do you know what I'm thinking? 'Cause you're an asshole, and I didn't tell you. And so I never liked, at least in my recollection, I could be wrong, I didn't like that angle of it. And so when I took a class that really looked at a much more scientific approach to understanding psychology, that focused on research methods and experimentation, and had a philosophical angle that embraced a sort of more cohesive worldview that didn't have so many assumptions, and it didn't rely so much on a bunch of different theories, that started appealing to me right away. And I really like the scientific angle of it. So that's where I really found my passion in psychology, and have pursued it since then. And went and got, did a lot of studying in this field in terms of getting higher education. Did a lot of work in the clinical application, working with kids, working with adults. I've now been teaching psychology at a college level. I've done a lot of presentations and lectures and that sort of thing. So that's been my background. And so part of the reason that I wanted to do this podcast originally, and you sort of, I wanted to start this, and then I kind of fell off the wagon, and you came back, and I'm glad we were working together now to make it happen.
Hmm.
Was that there's so much out there in the world of psychology that's just, it's sort of, I think it's misconstrued,
Hmm.
or it's this pop psychology, sort of folk psychology element where things are the quick headline you read about, like, oh, this is why you pick your fingernails, or this is the food you need to eat so that you stop being falling asleep at work.
Yeah.
And there's all these things that people read that it's clickbait
Yeah.
headlines.
Yeah.
And
10 tips for X.
exactly
How to
right.
solve this in 3 easy steps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I wanted to sort of create a way that I could reach as many people as possible who are interested in psychology, maybe not necessarily psychology,
Hmm.
majors or working in the field of psychology, but they hear a lot of this stuff and they're interested in it, and they always want to know, why is it when I tell my child to do this, I have to tell them 1,000 times before they do it,
Yeah.
and why is it that my significant other always does this thing that makes me mad? People want to understand the world around them, and
Yeah.
they certainly want to understand what other people are doing. And I think a lot of people also want to understand why they do what they do.
Hmm.
Why can't I quit smoking? Why do I pick my fingernails?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a lot of what I wanted to do with this podcast, was to approach this psychological element of life where not I, but
Yeah.
where we take the science that we know about, and we communicate it in a way that's really easy to understand for people without doing the clickbaity headline sort of
Hmm.
thing. So that's really, I think, what my intention was here. I'd like to hear your addition to this.
Yeah. So I guess my 2 cents would be that there really is so much out there when it comes to psychology that it's kind of hard to kind of sift through, like you were saying, in the various different ways it's presented. And there's not, I guess part of it's kind of cool is that there's no boundaries for, I guess, or it doesn't seem that there's many boundaries, right?
Sure.
So it's applicable to all areas of life.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to me too that all the kind of things that it deals with is something that we all interact with every day. So it makes it very easy to feel like you are a master of it when you may or may not be a master of it,
Right.
actually. So I thought I kind of understood the world and I knew how to kind of go about it, and what, I guess, not necessarily, I guess, my role was, but that I kind of understood how things worked and how to kind of chase things down as I learned more and more about areas of psychology, and the various different areas of it, whether it was like experimental research or how it was applied or the philosophy behind it. I soon realized that I didn't know much at all, and that what was kind of cool from that was as I started to understand where different areas of psychology became relevant in my life, and like how different areas of or subsets of psychology actually approached it or approached different phenomenon. It was kind of enlightening, I guess, in a way, to where I could kind of see like, hey, there is a way to, there's a different way to kind of look at the world, and that world was then all of a sudden much easier to approach, understand, influence, and work towards, which is pretty cool.
So I guess, since really the purpose of this podcast is just sort of introduce what we're up to,
Mm-hmm.
we'll sort of highlight, at least right now, our vision is that we're going to tackle a lot of topics. Some of them will be a little bit more broad. I think we'll have opportunities to make those more specific later on if we get a lot of interest from people, or we really feel like we didn't necessarily do the kind of coverage we wanted to do on
Yeah.
something. So we'll talk about how psychology applies to things like business and education and habit reversal, and what kind of crazy things have happened in the history of psychology.
Yeah, teaching,
Yeah.
divorce, study habits.
And then things like disorders and the ever popular autism and things like that.
Organizational settings, sports, human
Yeah.
performance.
And even like some, plant psychology is a thing that's
Yeah.
really kind of
Yeah.
interesting. There's stuff to talk about there. So yeah, I think we really don't have a limit on what we won't talk about, as long as we are wrapping in the scientific psychological angle.
Yeah, yeah,
Cool.
100%.
Sweet. So I think that's pretty much what we're going to be up to. That's at least our intention at the moment.
Mhm.
And that we're open to, this might turn into maybe something else, might evolve a little bit.
Yeah, I actually think there's a really good chance it's going to evolve a lot.
Yeah.
What's always been cool is especially as I get further down the road, like projects I work on that I'm passionate about with people that I care about, always head down usually a good road. Like we've kind of follow like the progress and the data and responses and the questions that people have, and we can adjust towards those. So I'm sure it's going to be very fruitful wherever it heads.
Yeah.
We'll see where it goes.
Cool. And then, and I want to make sure, I sort of said this already, but just make sure that we're always making this so that it applies and is accessible to sort of your average, everyday folk.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully it's interesting enough that people who are into psychology will also want to listen in, and they maybe learn something, or they rehash old things that they already knew, or just revisit things that they're familiar with just because it's fun.
Yeah.
Things
Yeah.
and at the same time want to try and reach as many people as we can, especially those who are they don't have degrees in psychology, they're not professionals working in the field.
Yeah.
So this is really meant to be accessible to everyone, sort of the average person, and try and relate the questions that people might have and the concept of psychology to sort of your average person, I think.
I think that about wraps it up.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Got nothing else? I don't think I have anything else.
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right, cool. All right, well, be on the lookout for our upcoming episodes. We should be launching one at the same time this one launches, unless something weird happens. But yeah, otherwise, we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for listening to Why We Do What We Do. If you like what you heard and would like to support the show, please consider heading over to our Patreon account at patreon.com/WWDWWD podcast. Every little bit helps, and we're continuously lining up perks and merch for our supporters. Contact us on any social media platform at WWDWWD podcast, or email us at info@wwdwwdpodcast.com. You can learn more about this episode and other episodes by going to www.wwdpodcast.com. There you will find links and detailed and shareable show notes. This episode of Why We Do What We Do was written and produced by Ryan O. and Abraham, artwork and logo design by Andrew Pollock at nogdesigns.com, video and production assistance from Tyler Bessier, and music courtesy of Justin Greenhouse.